The night my boyfriend dumped me for a richer woman, the summer rain in Busan was falling hard, turning the Haeundae Beach boardwalk into a glittering mirror. I stood there soaked, tears mixing with rain, while Malik said, "You're sweet, Kim, but she fits my future better." Lightning flashed over the dark sea as he walked away. 3 hours later, I was sheltering near the old docks in Gamcheon when gunshots ripped through the storm. I watched a tall, tattooed Korean man execute traitors with terrifying calm. Then, a sniper's red dot appeared on his chest. Without thinking, I screamed and shoved him. The bullet grazed my shoulder as we slammed onto the wet concrete. Cold rain poured over us. He caught me, his piercing dark eyes locking onto mine while thunder rolled across Busan's hills. His hand pressed my wound. Then he saw the small dragon-shaped birthmark on my collarbone, glowing under the torn, wet fabric. His voice low and dangerous over the rain. "Kim Ahmadi, the blood oath is real." Lightning illuminated his sharp face and neck tattoos. "From tonight, in this Busan rain, you belong to me." The night Malik discarded Kim Ahmadi for a wealthier woman, heavy summer rain pounded the windows of the upscale Haeundae restaurant like an accusation. She sat across from him, fork frozen above her plate, as he delivered the words without flinching. "This isn't working anymore, Kim. She opens doors I actually need." He stood, adjusted his jacket, and left her there with the bill and the stares of curious diners. Kim rose with quiet dignity, stepped out into the downpour, and walked. Rain soaked through her dress, plastering fabric to her skin, but she kept moving along the glittering coastal road. Each step pushed the humiliation deeper, turning it into something harder, something that refused to dissolve. She had believed in loyalty. He had chosen convenience. Hours later, the same storm lashed the old docklands where she had wandered seeking silence. Gunshots rang out between thunderclaps. Kim ducked behind shipping crates and watched a tall Korean man in a dark coat execute 3 men with chilling efficiency. His commands were short, his posture absolute. Then a red laser dot danced across his chest. She moved before thought could stop her, slamming her body into his. The bullet sliced her shoulder instead. They hit the slick ground hard, rain mixing with blood as waves slammed the pier nearby. He pinned her instantly, one hand pressing firmly on her wound while his dark eyes searched her face with intense focus. Close like this, he carried a crisp trace of cypress bark and warm clove. "You inserted yourself where you had no place," he said, voice steady and commanding against the storm. His fingers tilted her chin with clear possession, exposing the small dragon birthmark on her collarbone. Recognition tightened his features. "The old agreement holds. Your bloodline controls what my empire needs." Sung-hyun Park lifted her into his arms, as if she offered no resistance at all. "You saved me tonight, Kim Ahmadi. That decision binds you to me now. My protection, my terms, my claim." His tone left no space for negotiation, the power dynamic settling over her like the relentless rain. Kim woke the next morning in a vast cliffside mansion overlooking the churning East Sea. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed angry waves below. Her shoulder was neatly bandaged. The room spoke of wealth and control, minimal, precise, overwhelming. Sung-hyun stood near the window watching her. "You're awake. Good. We have much to discuss about the life you just stepped into." His gaze held hers without apology, already shaping her future to fit his will. The woman Malik had thrown away was no longer free to simply walk away. Gentle rain tapped against the floor-to-ceiling windows as Kim sat up slowly in the wide bed. Her shoulder throbbed under the fresh bandage, But the room felt steady now, the East Sea stretching grey and restless below the cliff. Sung-hyun stood watching her, hands clasped behind his back, his presence filling the space without effort. "You slept through the worst of it," he said, voice calm and decisive. "The bullet only grazed you. My doctor handled the rest." Kim swung her legs over the edge of the bed, testing her strength. "I need to leave. This isn't my world." Sung-hyun crossed the room in measured steps and stopped directly in front of her. He tilted her chin upward with 2 fingers, forcing her eyes to meet his. "Your world changed the moment you pushed me out of that bullet's path. There is no leaving." He moved to a side table and poured water into a glass, offering it to her like a command rather than a courtesy. As she drank, he began to speak. 20 years ago, my mentor formed a pact with a trusted partner from Nigeria. That partner was your father. He supplied critical routes and connections that helped us build this empire across continents. When he died, the alliance weakened. We lost access to locked accounts, hidden alliances, and resources only his bloodline can open. You carry that blood, Kim Ahmadi. The dragon mark proves it. You are the hidden heir we have waited for. Kim stared at him, the words landing like stones in her chest. Her father had always been a quiet businessman in her memories. Now this stranger claimed he had lived another life entirely, one that now chained her here. Sung-hyun's expression remained controlled, but his eyes held clear possession. "You unlocked something the moment you saved me. My empire needs you, and I do not release what I need." Later that evening, they sat across from each other at a long dining table overlooking the sea. Waves crashed violently against the rocks below, sending spray into the air. The gentle rain had returned, streaking the glass. Servants placed dishes before them in silence. Kim pushed food around her plate, tension tight in her shoulders. "You expect me to believe I'm suddenly valuable because of a dead man's promise?" "I expect you to understand your position," Sung-hyun replied, his tone firm and unyielding. He leaned forward slightly, eyes locked on hers. "You belong here now, under my roof, under my protection, by my side. The sooner you accept that, the smoother this transition will be." Kim held his gaze, heart racing, caught between defiance and the undeniable pull of his authority. Outside, the waves continued their relentless assault, mirroring the storm building between them. Strong sea winds whipped across the mountain villa outside Busan, carrying the sharp salt of the distant East Sea. Kim stood on the open training terrace 2 days later, borrowed clothes clinging to her frame as gusts tugged at her sleeves and hair. The city sprawled far below, but up here everything felt raw and exposed. Sung-hyun moved like a man who had never known hesitation. He had brought her here at first light with the simple order: "You will learn to survive in my world." No discussion, no choice. His men watched from a respectful distance while he demonstrated basic stances, how to shift weight, how to strike without telegraphing intent. Every correction came with firm hands on her arms or shoulders, guiding her into position. The cultural gap hit her in waves. The precise, disciplined movements felt alien compared to the fluid street energy she knew from home. Commands were short, delivered in that calm, absolute tone that left no room for questions. She was used to negotiating her way through life. Here, negotiation did not exist. "Again," Sung-hyun said, circling her. A powerful gust slammed into them, nearly knocking her off balance. She stumbled. In one smooth motion, he closed the distance, pulling her back against his chest, with an arm locked around her waist. His body shielded her from the worst of the wind, solid and unyielding. She could feel the steady beat of his heart through his shirt, the controlled strength in the way he held her in place. You hesitate because you still think like an outsider, he murmured near her ear, voice low and commanding. In my world, hesitation gets you killed, or taken. His grip tightened just enough to emphasize the point, possessive and instructional at once. Kim's breath caught at the contact, the heat of him contrasting sharply with the cold wind rushing around them. She twisted in his hold, refusing to stay passive. Their eyes met inches apart. For a moment the wind seemed to quiet as something electric passed between them. Attraction flickered, unwanted yet undeniable, mixing with her lingering anger at being pulled so completely into his orbit. You enjoy controlling everything, don't you? She challenged, voice steady despite the racing pulse in her throat. Sung-hyun's lips curved with dark satisfaction. He did not release her. I protect what belongs to me. And you, Kim Amadi, belong here now. Another strong gust tore across the terrace, but he kept her anchored against him, the power dynamic crystal clear. She was learning more than defense. She was learning exactly how thoroughly he intended to claim every part of her new life. The massive thunderstorm rolled over Busan that night, shaking the cliffside mansion with deep rolling booms. Rain pounded the windows in heavy sheets, while lightning carved sharp white lines across the dark East Sea. Inside, the lights flickered once, twice, then died completely, plunging the long corridors into darkness, broken only by sudden flashes. Kim stood by the tall window in the main sitting area, arms wrapped around herself, watching the storm rage. The power outage felt fitting. Everything in her life had lost its steady current since the night Malik walked away. She heard Sung-hyun's footsteps behind her, measured, confident, impossible to ignore. You're still fighting it, he said, stopping close enough that she felt the heat from his body. Even now. She turned to face him. In the next lightning flash, his sharp features stood out clearly, eyes locked on her with that same unyielding possession. I'm not something you can just claim after one night. Sung-hyun closed the remaining distance. His hand came up to cup the side of her neck, thumb brushing her jaw with deliberate control. I already have. When the lights flickered back on briefly before dying again, he used the moment to pull her against him. But Sung-hyun kissed with a certainty that pulled her focus away from everything else. His hands moved with intention, sliding down her back, drawing her closer as the storm roared outside. He guided her back against the wide table, the space between them disappearing as the moment deepened. She hesitated for a brief second, caught between resistance and something she couldn't ignore, but the tension quickly shifted. The distance she tried to hold on to faded as she met him halfway, the storm outside echoing the intensity building between them. Stop thinking about the man who left you behind, he murmured, his voice low but steady. You're not that person anymore. Lightning flashed again, revealing the emotion in both their eyes. Kim gave in to the moment then, pulling him closer as everything else faded into the sound of rain and thunder. What followed wasn't rushed. It was powerful, unspoken, and inevitable. Time blurred as the storm carried on, their connection deepening in a way neither of them could deny. The balance between them shifted, not through force, but through something far more consuming. Later, as the rain continued to fall against the windows, Kim rested against him, her breathing slowly steadying. The ache Malik left behind was still there, but quieter now, overshadowed by something stronger taking root. She stared into the darkness, realizing this moment had changed something in her. Not weakness, not surrender. A choice. And Sung-hyun, still holding her close, didn't loosen his grip, not out of control, but as if he understood that neither of them would walk away from this unchanged. The humid evening air clung heavily over Busan as mist rolled in from the sea, softening the sharp edges of the Jagalchi fish market. Kim sat at a quiet corner cafe table, dressed in a tailored black outfit Seung-hyun had chosen for her. The silk blouse and fitted trousers gave her a polished edge that turned heads without effort. Days under his roof had reshaped her posture, her gaze, the way she held silence like a weapon. Her phone had buzzed earlier with messages from Malik. He was in Busan for business and had heard strange rumors. She had agreed to this single meeting only to close the door firmly. Malik arrived, scanning the misty tables until he spotted her. He stopped short a few paces away, surprise flashing across his face. The woman before him looked nothing like the one he had left in the rain. Her deep brown skin glowed under the low lights, her expression calm and steady, carrying a quiet authority he had never seen in her before. "Kim," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. "You look different. People are saying you're connected to someone powerful. I had to see for myself." She regarded him without warmth, the mist thickening around the market stalls. "You came all this way to check if I'm surviving without you?" Malik leaned forward, attempting the charming smile that once worked on her. "I made a mistake. That girl meant nothing. I was stressed, thinking about the future. But we can fix this. Come back with me." Kim's lips curved with cool amusement. She no longer felt the sting of his rejection. Instead, she felt the weight of Seung-hyun's claim still lingering on her skin from the night before. His hands, his commands, the way he had made her body answer only to him. That power dynamic had shifted something permanent inside her. "I don't need fixing," she replied, voice even and clear. "You discarded me because I didn't open doors for you. Now those doors have opened wider than you could ever imagine." Fog swirled thicker between them as a light breeze carried the scent of salt and fresh seafood from the market. Malik reached for her hand, but she pulled it back smoothly, untouched. "Who is he?" Malik pressed, irritation rising. "Some rich Korean guy. This isn't you, Kim." She stood towering in confidence. "This is exactly me now. The version you never bothered to see." Her eyes held his without flinching. "Don't contact me again." As she walked away through the misty streets, the elegant lines of her new life wrapped around her like armor. Malik remained seated, stunned, watching the woman he once threw away disappear into the fog, untouchable, transformed, and already claimed by a far more dangerous world. The private garden in Seoul was wrapped in soft pink during peak cherry blossom season. Petals drifted down steadily in the light breeze, covering the stone paths like gentle snowfall. Kim walked beside Seung-hyun along the secluded trail, the city's noise far behind them. For the first time since the dock incident, the tension in her chest had eased just enough to breathe. Seung-hyun kept one hand at the small of her back, guiding her with that familiar possessive touch, even in this peaceful setting. "You handled your ex well in Busan," he said, voice low. "But I see the questions still sitting behind your eyes." Kim stopped under a heavy branch, watching petals settle on her shoulders. "My father never mentioned any of this. Not the pacts, not the danger, not the empire he helped build. I thought he was just a quiet man who worked hard. Now I'm here, decoding pieces of a life I never knew existed." She looked up at him. "It makes me wonder who I really am." Seung-hyun turned her to face him fully. His hand came up to brush petals from her hair, the gesture surprisingly measured. "You are the missing piece, stronger than the woman Malik discarded. I saw that the night you ran into gunfire without hesitation." His fingers lingered on her jaw, tilting her face upward. "And you are mine to protect while you discover that strength." The admission unlocked something in her. Kim told him about the night she spent wondering why she was never enough for Malik, how his rejection had stripped her confidence bare. Sung-hyun listened without interrupting, his dark eyes steady, absorbing every word. When she finished, he pulled her closer, chest firm against hers. "You were never the problem," he said, tone absolute. "He simply lacked the vision to see your value. I do not." Later that evening, back in the secured Seoul residence, Sung-hyun placed an encrypted ledger tablet in front of her. Many have tried. None succeeded. Kim studied the patterns, her sharp mind working through layers of code and references her father had once taught her as a child in different form. After tense minutes of silence, she identified the key sequence and unlocked the first section. Columns of accounts, alliances, and hidden routes appeared on screen. Sung-hyun stood behind her, hands braced on either side of the table, caging her in as he reviewed the revealed data. Satisfaction darkened his expression. No one else could have done that. He leaned down, lips brushing her ear. "You are becoming exactly what this empire needs. What I need." Kim leaned back into his solid frame, the falling petals outside mirroring the quiet shift between them. The dangerous man who had claimed her without permission was now anchoring something deeper, and she was no longer fighting it as fiercely. Their bond tightened in that moment, forged in secrets, blossoms, and growing trust. The violent monsoon struck Busan without mercy, turning streets into rushing rivers and visibility into a grey blur. Torrential rain hammered the city as Sung-hyun's convoy moved through the flooded district. Kim sat beside him in the armoured vehicle, tension thick between them after their return from Seoul. Gunfire erupted without warning. Rival faction vehicles cut them off, bullets shattering glass and forcing the convoy to a violent stop. "Stay down," Sung-hyun ordered, already drawing his weapon. But the attackers swarmed fast, using the downpour for cover. Chaos exploded. Sung-hyun pulled Kim out into the flooding street, shielding her as they ran for better position. Rain soaked them instantly, clothes heavy, shoes slipping on the submerged pavement. His men returned fire, but the rivals had numbers and the advantage of the storm. A bullet caught one of Sung-hyun's guards in the chest. Another attacker charged through the sheets of rain, knife raised, aiming for Sung-hyun's back while he engaged two others. Time slowed. Kim's mind sharpened, the same instinct that had saved him on the docks now burning colder. She grabbed a fallen guard's pistol from the flooded ground, water streaming down her face. The attacker was closing in. Sung-hyun was occupied, exposed for one critical second. Without hesitation, Kim raised the weapon and fired twice. The shots hit true. The man dropped into the rising water, lifeless. No scream, no second thought, just cold calculation. Sung-hyun turned, eyes locking onto her through the pounding rain. Something fierce and approving flashed across his face as he finished his opponents with precise shots. More rivals pressed forward, but his remaining men gained control, forcing the attackers to retreat into the flooded alleys. Breathing hard, drenched to the bone, Kim lowered the gun. Her hand shook slightly, but her gaze stayed steady. She had crossed a line, choosing violence to protect the man who had claimed her so completely. Sung-hyun reached her in 2 strides, pulling her against his chest despite the chaos still echoing around them. Rain poured over them both, as his hand gripped the back of her neck with firm possession. "You protected what is yours," he said, voice rough with intensity. "That decision makes you more than just the heir. It makes you part of this empire." Kim met his eyes, water streaming between them, the weight of what she had done settling deep. The woman Malik discarded had just killed to save the dangerous king who now held her tighter than ever. The power between them had shifted again, deeper and more binding in the heart of the monsoon war. The powerful typhoon slammed into Busan, battering the cliffside mansion with ferocious winds and driving rain that sounded like gunfire against the reinforced glass. Inside, the lights flickered as alarms blared. Sung-hyun moved with lethal focus, securing weapons while ordering his men into position. Then the betrayal struck from within. One of his trusted lieutenants turned during the chaos, gun raised towards Sung-hyun's back as he coordinated the defense. "The empire belongs to those who earned it," the man snarled, "not some outsider and her bloodline." Kim saw the move before Sung-hyun could react. She grabbed the pistol from the table and fired without hesitation, dropping the traitor where he stood. The gunshot echoed through the mansion as more disloyal guards revealed themselves, turning the home into a battlefield. Sung-hyun fought beside her, their bodies moving in sync as wind howled outside. A bullet grazed his side. Kim dragged him behind cover, pressing her hand to the wound while exchanging fire. The power dynamic had flipped in the crisis. She was no longer just the protected. She was protecting. Then, suddenly, the eye of the storm arrived. The violent winds died to complete silence. The rain stopped. An eerie calm settled over the mansion, the East Sea visible and strangely still through cracked windows. In that quiet moment, Sung-hyun leaned against the wall, breathing hard, his dark eyes fixed on her with raw intensity. Blood stained his shirt. "This is the war you chose when you saved me," he said, voice rough. "Stay or walk away, but decide now." Kim stood over the body of the traitor she had killed, rain dripping from her hair. The old Kim, the one Malik discarded, would have run. This version felt the weight of the ledger codes in her mind, the lives now tied to her decisions, and the undeniable pull of the man who had claimed her so completely. She walked to Sung-hyun, gripped his chin firmly, and met his gaze with steel. "I'm not walking away. This empire is mine too. We finished this together, as equals. No more simply belonging to you. We rule it." Sung-hyun's lips curved with dark pride. He pulled her down into a fierce kiss, sealing her choice as the typhoon's outer wall began to roar back to life. Kim had fully embraced her power. The game had changed forever. The typhoon finally passed, leaving Busan bathed in bright sunlight that sparkled across the East Sea like scattered diamonds. Kim stood on the wide terrace of the cliff mansion beside Sung-hyun, dressed in a sleek, deep emerald outfit that commanded attention. The respect in his men's eyes had shifted. She was no longer the outsider they tolerated. She was the queen who had fought through the storm with them. Later that afternoon, they met Malik at a luxury rooftop restaurant overlooking the city. Clear blue skies stretched endlessly above, a sharp contrast to the heavy rain that once marked her lowest moment. Malik waited at the table, his confidence visibly cracking as Kim and Sung-hyun approached together. "Kim," he said, rising quickly, eyes darting between them. "I heard what happened. This has gone too far. Whatever this man promised you, it's not real. Come back. We can still fix things." Kim smiled with cool elegance, standing tall. Sung-hyun remained slightly behind her, one hand resting possessively at her lower back, making no move to interrupt. The power dynamic was unmistakable. "Fix things?" Kim's voice carried quiet authority. "You threw me away because I didn't fit your ambitions. Now you see me standing here and suddenly want me back." She stepped closer, eyes steady. "I was never the problem, Malik. You simply lacked the strength to value what you had. This man didn't just claim me, He recognized what I am capable of, and I chose to claim my place beside him. Malik's face tightened with regret as he glanced at Sunghyun's unreadable expression. This world will destroy you. No, Kim replied smoothly. It strengthened me. We're done here. Don't reach out again. As they left the rooftop, Sunghyun pulled her close, his hand firm on her waist. You handled that perfectly, he murmured, pride clear in his tone. At dusk, they walked along a quiet stretch of beach. The soft ocean breeze played across their skin, carrying the calm rhythm of gentle waves. Kim stopped near the water's edge and turned to face him. The setting sun painted everything in warm gold. I meant what I said in the eye of the storm, she told him. Equals, not just yours to command. Sunhyun studied her for a long moment, then pulled her firmly against him. Equals, he agreed, voice low and rough with promise. His hand cupped the back of her neck as he kissed her deeply, passionately, the power between them balanced and electric. In that moment, under the clearing skies of Busan, Kim stood complete, transformed, respected, and bound to the dangerous king who now shared his throne with her.